Watch this video with our virtual reality glasses for smartphone. virtualvizor.com.
Alright, hello everyone and welcome to the VR Creator and Experience Designer panel. You've survived so far, congratulations. I believe there is only one panel on VR right after this one. That will be the last one of this year's Digital Hollywood. I strongly encourage you to stick around for that one. It will also be very interesting. So, what about we go down the table and I will ask my dear panelists to introduce themselves and tell a little bit more about what you're doing and why you're here, why you're working in the virtual reality field today. I'm Celine Tricart. I'll be the moderator. I'm the founder of Lucid Dreams Productions, director and director of photography. So let's start with you, Edward.
My name's Edward. Hello. My name's Edward Button. I'm a director of photography. I come out of a union DP who got into this world about 4 years ago. I partook in NYU's Media Lab, ITP, right when DK1 came out. And so sort of getting into gaming, physical computing, computational media, spatial media, this sort of work. So after that, I landed pretty squarely in cinematic VR, 360 video to start, and now we're working a bunch in the game engine. I recently shot Doug Liman's VR series, which was released this morning, the first episode, Invisible, so go to Samsung VR and watch it. We need everybody to watch everything 4 times so that this keeps happening. I've also done projects with The Mill, with Nani Della Pena, and I'm currently working, I've got a residency at Technica in New York, Postworks, where I'm working on a game engine project, a very artistic game engine project, and developing live action work.
We have the trailer for Invisible, so let's take a look.
Sure, yeah. So this is the trailer for the series. Episode 1 was released this morning. I highly recommend looking at these things in goggles.
They are an incredibly secretive family that shied away from public scrutiny, usually behind layers of publicists and carefully managed media relationships.
I, Dr. Richard Ashland, being of sound mind, have chosen to leave my entire fortune to my granddaughter, Tatiana Ashland.
Where's Tatiana?
She's on her way to New York.
I want you to do something for me. Girl is an Ashland. No one knows about her. We can do what we want with her. She's the key to our future.
You know, my grandfather left a message for me before he died. He's had someone who's going to kill him.
He would do you people.
Doesn't stop.
So it's a little hard to watch these things when you're scrolling around on a computer, but it's interesting. It's the first, well, it's being billed as the first narrative sort of series. I don't think it is, but it's pretty close to one of the first large production series with like heavy lighting and a lot of traditional cinema work. So check it out.
Yeah, that looks pretty amazing, even though it's very hard to watch.
Yeah, it's really hard to watch scrolling around, but there's a lot of action scenes. Simon Crane was one of the directors, who's a well-known stunt director and like second unit action director. He did Rogue One, as well as Doug and a couple of other directors as well. Shot like a series. It's 5 to 6. I think it's 5 episodes at this point.
All right, now we're going to go to Csilla Andersen, who is the head of content relations for Nokia Technologies.
So my role at Nokia is actually to evangelize the technology with the creative community. So I'm here to talk about our camera and talk about our technology. And I welcome anybody who has some interest in talking about what we do. But I have a team of people who are doing productions and integrating with production teams. And we have a camera, virtual reality camera that Celine put up there. It's a 360 and it captures 360 3D virtual reality camera. It also captures sound. So as you can see on the picture, it's like a small ball, and there are 8 lenses in the small ball. And basically it outputs those 8 lenses and the 8 audio that is captured by the camera, 8 different spots. Through one single cable. So it's the ease of use with this camera has been one of the big pluses compared to some of the earlier rigs people were using. It also, every sensor has 2K by 2K resolution, and it has globally synced shutters between the 8 lenses. So we have been working with the creative community already, both bigger Hollywood studios and smaller studios, VR studios. And I wanted to talk about some of the pieces that we created, so you could check it out online. So we have a partnership with Disney, and we have released already one theatrical piece, which is the Pete's Dragon VR experience, which is available on Samsung VR and other YouTube as well, other platforms. It's basically a piece where you experience from Pete's point of view riding the dragon across a canyon. It's a very interesting experience. It's also, I think some of these pieces I'm talking about, I think the camera is really favored by filmmakers for rigging options, which is it's really portable, it's light, it's a small footprint, so people prefer when you can hang it out of the helicopter, or you can put it on a cable cam. So another piece we have just released 2 weeks ago is a music video with One Republic. And it was a partnership with Universal Music Group and Here Be Dragons and MPC. And we have basically put a camera and guided the viewer across an alley from one room to another. It's a story about a girl and a boy who are noticing each other across an alley. They live across a narrow alley. And with the help of the cable cam, we transported the viewer to one room, to the street, to the other room, and kind of guided them through this story. And the third piece I wanted to mention, which we're most proud of at the moment, actually, it's Argos, the Argos file, which won the Proto Awards 2 weeks ago for Best Live Action. And it's a crime resolution by reliving somebody else's memory, which is you relive the murder victim's memory, you become that other person, and the whole story is told in POV. So it's, again, another way of guiding the user through a story. It's a POV perception. So it's very, very challenging, or how should I say, it's a very revolutionary content because it uses everything that we were told not allowed to do in VR, which is fast cuts, dark environments, visual effects integration into lat longs, and all sorts of things. Moving the camera. Actually, the main actor, the victim, he's walking around with the camera above his head. So, it went a lot of work into making that work, and it's amazing.
All right, and right next to Csilla, we have Andrew Wilson, who happened to have directed a movie with the Nokia Ozo and survived to tell about it. It's
one picture.
Do you want to tell me more about
That's the Ozo there on the right.
And the shoot?
We were lucky enough to be hired by Shinola, which is a kind of they make bikes and leather goods, and they're based in Detroit, and they're part of they position themselves as kind of part of the Detroit resurgence. So they asked us to just do a kind of a factory tour in 3D, and we'd never worked in this, you know, in this environment before with these cameras, so it was a huge learning experience for us. When I see what you guys are working on, you know, it's incredible what the possibilities and what's out there. You really, you know, just in the short time that I worked on it, you could, you know, the mind races with the possibilities. So, yeah, it was a really exciting thing, even though it's sort of a relatively mundane, kind of basically an industrial. I think it's still, and we sort of really just scratched the surface of the possibilities of the technology. So when I see what you guys are working on, that's really kind of much more kind of pushing the limit and really exciting. But I think there's obviously all sorts of applications.
And finally, we have Rory, who will introduce yourself, and I would like you to talk specifically about a project that you did that I really like, that was shot at the LA River.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Lynn. My name is Rory Mitchell. I'm a co-founder of Beard and Glasses VR with my partners Dan Lickerblau and Josh Poland. We are a boutique VR studio based in downtown LA. We've done some branded content for Kettle One and some documentary work for the Department of Cultural Affairs, and just finished up a couple of our first narratives, a couple of love stories. But the project that I'm here to talk about is called Tom Explores Los Angeles. This comes out of, or Tom wanders around Los Angeles. For a while, I was a historical consultant, as well as a theater director doing research into the built environment. I met Tom, and this led to making short history documentaries about Los Angeles, and led to meeting Tom Carroll, who's had a YouTube show called Tom Explores Los Angeles, and we decided to make a short VR piece about the history of the LA River, specifically the confluence of the Arroyo Seco and the LA River, which you may be better acquainted with being the intersection of the 5 and the 110. And after doing a lot of research, it turned out that there was an incredible amount of history based in that one location. And we have a clip from it. This picks up right after Tom has skateboarded in, hopped off his skateboard, informed you that when the Spanish explorers arrived in Los Angeles, this was their first sight of Los Angeles.
And we know that because we have access to their travel journal, and I have a quote here. I'll read it real quick. We entered a very spacious valley, well grown with cottonwoods and alders, among which ran a beautiful river from the north-northwest. Towards the north-northeast, there is another riverbed which forms a spacious watercourse, but we found it dry. Dry, or in Spanish, arroyo seco, dry creek, dry wash. Jump to 1781, the year the Pueblo of Los Angeles is founded. 44 people make their way up from Mexico and found the Pueblo of Los Angeles. And that first piece of infrastructure that I talked about was right here. It was a dam part of the LA River, and that water fed the Pueblo. Next door, we have this green bridge. That green bridge is a legacy of the Southern Pacific Railroad. They made their connection in 1876. LA was then connected to the Transcontinental Railroad. It brought in people, it brought in goods, and it really allowed Los Angeles to grow to 1.5 million people in 1938. 1938, that same year, we had a terrible flood, an incredibly destructive flood. We actually have footage of the flood. If we look over here, we can see just how devastating the waterway of the LA River was. Millions of dollars worth of damage. So city leaders knew they had to do something about it, so they contacted the Army Corps of Engineers. And Army Corps employed 17,000 people to lay 2 million cubic yards of concrete along all 51 miles of the LA River. While they were doing that, the 110 freeway was being built. The first freeway west of the Mississippi was being built. We also call it the Arroyo Seco Parkway, and it's called that because it follows the path of the Arroyo Seco. It goes all the way up into Pasadena. And that's interesting because that is the same path that the Native Americans took for thousands of years. Because it was a dry creek, it was an easy pathway up to what we now know as the San Gabriel Valley. And we know that because we have access to the...
All right. So thank you so much. I really like this piece. I think this is a beautiful use of virtual reality. I've learned, so I literally live 5 minutes from this location. I've learned, and I've shot a movie about the Heather River, as you know, and I've learned a lot. And it was beautiful use of 360. So, Csilla, I have a question for you. As the head of content relation for Nokia, what are your thoughts on what's the type of content that's particularly fit for virtual reality? There's a lot of people who talk about documentaries, of course, live, horror, genre. What are your thoughts on cinematic VR and the type of content?
Yeah, I think I got really excited about the POV content lately because we did the Argos piece where you can become somebody else, and you can, I think guidance is very important in 360. Like, think about when you write as a writer, how you're going to guide your audience, still giving them the freedom to look around, ideally even interact with the content if that's possible. But there's a way of guiding through, but you experience what that victim is experiencing, the violence or the love or the thrill or whatever. I think in POV that's really interesting exploration. There was another piece of content done with also in POV called Defrost, which Randall Kaiser's episodic, he shot 12 episodes, and that's a woman who has been frozen and wakes up and meet her family again after 30 years. And it's just a wonderful way of becoming somebody else. You really think when you watch the content, you become that person. So I think POV is one example, but in general, I think where you can create the sense of presence, where things are happening, the interesting things happening around the camera within 15 feet, when things unfold when a story could be told that it is near the viewer and it can be experienced by the viewer, like he or she is there, or he or she become this other person, or go to this other place.
And Andrew, in the Shinola film, you decided to take the first-person view. The actor, Luke, is talking directly to the camera, so we feel like we're there. But also, as a director in virtual reality, there is a lot of losses. We lose the frame, the close-ups, all those little things that also very important for comedy. So what are your thoughts on directing for virtual reality and those losses?
Well, I think you do lose some things. I think you probably gain. I think the pros outweigh the cons. Some of the things like the camera not moving, I think forced us to try to come up with some other kind of more creative solutions. We didn't, we sort of settled on this kind of man on the street, Letterman-esque style out of necessity. We didn't have a lot of time to prep or plan. There was no real script, so we just decided to shoot a ton of footage and see if we could cobble together three or four funny minutes. But I think, the next time I'd like to have something much more carefully planned and scripted and really kind of take advantage of the technology. I mean, we did a couple of shots, I think, that are fun, but again, like when I see what you guys are doing and you have a kind of a more careful plan, I think you can really take advantage of phenomenal opportunities.
So there's a lot of losses, but what you're saying is, wow, we're also gaining by doing virtual reality.
For sure. I mean, I think it's like some of the things like the sound cues and things like that you can use, and I mean, I'm really just learning myself, so I feel like there's tremendous amount of opportunity. It way outweighs the things that you have to do differently.
I think you mentioned something really, really good, though, that you don't really lose your close-ups. They're just much harder to get, and you have to get creative about how you make that impact. So say, well, we want to make this impact that we would traditionally make a close-up or an insert shot on a 135 millimeter lens. So instead, we've got to get creative how to make that exact same impact with other devices. And they could be literally a traditional close-up, but using those other devices, we can still make the same point.
Absolutely.
And that's where the creative, it's a really good point, I think.
So Thank you, because you're introducing my next question. That's for you, and it's on cue. We have some lights on your face, so we can talk about cinematography now. It's funny because on your profile photo there, you're with a film camera, and you come from traditional cinematography, just like I do. So my question for you is, do you think, being a DP in virtual reality, do you think you need this wealth of knowledge coming from film and traditional cinema and bring that knowledge into VR, or do you think that DPs that are maybe younger and just starting, doesn't have this knowledge, can also have like a place in VR, maybe fresher ideas? Or what are your thoughts on that?
That's such a really good question. I think it's absolutely beneficial to have that sort of traditional background. When I went to AFI, and when I went to film school, we were taught like very specific conversations that have been happening for decades. We have the same terminology that we use. We can go anywhere in the world and work with anybody who's a professional, and we're going to say this even across languages. We understand how to communicate. So I do think there's a place. You don't have to have that. One of the lovely parts of the technology is that you could just place a camera in a room, like one of these 2-lens cameras, and work. And I think I encourage everybody to do that. Everybody should shoot. But I think there's absolutely something to be learned from that traditional background. One of them being communication, for example. Like you lose 30 seconds of setup or a minute of setup over a month, you're losing a day of shooting. There's a lot of how we plan things out, how we think about light. That's really important. One of the things when we shot Invisible, we didn't really have successful video tabs yet. I think your camera was the only one that actually could be monitored. At the time, I mean, we were like, hacking a theta on top so the director could watch something. What was really special about it is it actually brought me back to a really traditional cinematography background, is that we had to use our eyes. Our video tab was like looking down a tube next to the camera, where you were looking through a Leica where you saw the action. So, one of the things that's really important to learn, there's a lot to learn from a traditional cinematography background where you're not going to see what you've actually shot till the next day. To use your light meter, to know, hey, I've got that exposure outside, to test your camera so you know what's happening. The old world of cinematography, you call the lab and you get 3 numbers. And those 3 numbers, red, green, and blue, or however you want to do it, are going to tell you everything you need to know about your image because you saw it with your eyes and you know how much silver essentially turned over in the film. And that's all we needed to know. Now we have all these complications. So I think like learning to say, hey, let's use our eyes. Let's go back to the day, back into the traditional thing. We'll plan our stuff out, stop, bend over wherever the camera is, look at the look around us and say, do we believe this world? And that's something that I think actually started to be lost with digital cinematography, is that we just suddenly started looking at a screen. You get stuck in another room with a director. You're not even in the room because you've got a screen in traditional, and then you've got to hide in VR. So like some of that traditional things of like, let's stand here together, look at the scene, prep for it, all of that work I think is extremely valuable. At the same time, it's not a barrier to entry, which is wonderful, and allows creative, it allows people to do things that don't necessarily have that background.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you.
Mike, I want to quote Mike Woods. He's was formerly at Brainstorming, as White Rabbit VR, and he says, your first instinct, and I've experienced this on almost every shoot I've been on, your first instinct as, like, say, a producer or director is to get rid of your DP. What do I need it for? There's no light, everything's available light. And then your second instinct is something else, and your third instinct is get the phone, I hope he's still available. And one of that, or they're still available. And I don't think that that's necessarily that you necessarily always need a DP, but I think you need that knowledge as a director. You need to have that knowledge is very, very useful because something gets lost.
I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, on the kids' music video, we used a lot of time on lighting, and I think you almost need a set designer as well who kind of hide the lights, because in 360 you will see everything. It's not like traditional that you light it behind the camera and then you don't see the lights, just the action.
No, and that's one of the reasons your piece looks so good and has no grain and is not flat, is that it's totally lit, and it's lit so well that like most people don't realize it's lit. One of the great things about this format is it can absorb non-motivated light. I find it can absorb overlighting. I mean, we overlit about half of invisible, and it totally works. But that's one of the reasons your piece looks so good. I was like almost shocked. It was like, that's the Nokia that I saw? It looks great. You know, but one of the reasons is that it's lit. It's like, in essence, it is like film. You have to expose for the medium and be aware of that.
I'm very sad that our sound friend didn't make it to the panel. He was texting me at 4 a.m., so I'm guessing I don't know why he didn't make it. So we're gonna go to you, Rory, because so many times producers come and ask me, hey, we can't afford an OZO, we cannot afford a jump one. Is VR, can we still do VR? What can we do as an independent production company? It doesn't have a lot of accessible. And so, can you tell me a little bit more about your piece, like the type of budget we're talking about, and how do you make that happen?
Yes, I certainly hope it's possible. No, we had no budget for this. We just had 4 months. Luckily, we've gotten some branded work to carry us through these things and give us the freedom to make our passion projects. But yeah, we've always subscribed to the idea that who or what you're pointing the camera at is far more important than what the actual camera is. In this piece, and a lot of that goes into story, a lot of that goes into pre-production and figuring out how you're going to tell the story and what the most fun story could be. So with this, we knew that we wanted to do a VR piece about the river, and we thought that doing it in a single location and showing all of the history that came through that one place would be more fun for the 360 degrees. We also knew that it was going to be visually interesting because of the sheer amount of concrete that's down there in the confluence. Like, those walls are probably 30 feet high around here. And also we knew it was a little dangerous down there, and we think that that's one of the best uses of VR, is to take you places that are either not safe or are not affordable or are in some way like a prohibitive place. And the story of the LA River is the story of its flooding. This is why we have those high walls there, and when the rains start, that river can rise very quickly. So it's not safe to go down there. It's almost like an AR piece in a way, in that if you were down there, we could have brought all of that stuff up in AR goggles. So this is kind of a faux AR piece. And then we, as far as actual production, like, we went, and because we didn't have access to the fine technology of being able to actually see what the hell was happening at that time, we went and pre-shot everything. We went down there and did a test to see how far away from the camera he was, where the camera should be. We shot that a couple of times, and research and story and all that.
That's a beautiful message of hope. Do you think there is also room for indie VR filmmaking in terms of distribution and visibility?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think especially right now in VR, there's still, as you've heard, there's still a dearth of content. There's not a lot of stuff out there, like new voices, people, especially, talent that hasn't used 360 yet, bringing fresh ideas into it. Like, the Shinola piece has got some of the best vibes of any VR piece out there. Like, it's just like, it's categorically different from other stuff that we've seen. But there's a lot of opportunity. Facebook 360, YouTube 360. These videos work very well for the larger public. People are still amazed by it, and it really opens up whole new vistas in storytelling. I think there are a lot of interesting debates as far as like how it gets made right now that I think allow for a big, people can make stuff, get it seen, and maybe one day monetize it.
Yourself, what camera do you own or rent for your project?
We use a variety. We use a couple of different GoPro-based cameras, one of which we modified with 195-degree fisheye lenses, which let me get much closer to the camera.
And if I had like a budget of like $500, can I buy cameras?
Oh yeah, I think you should get this fine Samsung gear right there. Just start making stuff and figuring out how it works.
That's the best one for a couple $100, and it actually does a really good job.
All right, I'm gonna go back to you, Csilla. Now, so this is definitely the entry level of VR. We have the high-end with the OZO, the Jaunt. There's the Google Odyssey, a couple of other high-end cameras. what is the future for those cameras? Because we know that light fields around the corner, photogrammetry, volumetric capture. Do you want to talk a little bit about those technology, and do you think there is still room for a traditional camera in virtual reality in the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think, you know, the camera is going to improve in a sense. I mean, today, some of the cameras, all the cameras have different capability, but if we look at, you know, most of the cameras, they have room for improvement for various reasons, either the form factor or the resolution or dynamic range. So I think those things will catch up pretty quickly to the current, you know, cameras and the traditional cameras, the 2D or 3D cameras. So I think that's one thing. I think also we need to think about cameras for different purposes, for high-end cinematic pieces versus, you know, like news reporting, where I just need to be really quick and portable and get there and get the story and go. So also cameras that can be, you know, put on a drone, and so we have done with our camera, but there's a couple of things, you know, need to improve.
But more and more people are using, instead of shooting with a camera that only lets you basically look around. You can't do room scale, which is being able to physically move in the area. So a lot of people are starting doing photogrammetry. Are you guys familiar with photogrammetry? Yes? No? Do you want? No? I say no. Photogrammetry is basically, you want to scan a room, you take a bunch of photos, very detailed photos of a room, and then using either a laser-based positioning system or GPS, you can replace the photo and you rebuild this room using photos with real texture into a game engine, for example, for virtual reality. And volumetric capture, so photogrammetry is what we call inside out. We shoot from inside to outside. Volumetric capture is kind of the equivalent to capture a performance of an actor, where we have like a bullet time system, a lot of cameras surrounding an actor that's playing its part, and we're capturing the actor from all the angles, and then we recreate this actor in 3D in a game engine, again using the capture from all those cameras. So what those technologies are allowing you to is having a quality that's close to live action, close to realism, but being able to do interactive or room scale experiences very quickly, very quick explanation. So what do you think VR, we will still be doing 360, like not being able to move in the scene in 10 years?
No, I'm actually very excited about, and hopefully shooting very soon a piece with the volumetric or the photogrammetry kind of solution where you actually allow the viewer to interact with the story. So you can go closer to things. If you want to go closer to that plant in the corner, you can start walking towards, and you actually catching up and feel like you're walking towards that, and interact with different other actors or whatever in the story. I think that's fascinating opportunity. And how do you know, write for that, I think is also very interesting. Like the writer really have to know this technology well before it can write for this, because you have to have different versions of the story depending on where the viewer chooses to go or choose to do.
What, Edward, do you want to talk more about photogrammetry?
Yeah, I've worked a bunch with photogrammetry, and photogrammetry is really interesting. What I was thinking of saying is also, you know, a photogrammetry experience where you have, you know, you have agency and you have you know, your first person. That's one sort of thing, and 360 video is, you know, you're stuck more like a movie in empathy. You know, in a video game you have ego, in a movie you have empathy, right? And so some of the experiences we're talking about are like walking a slippery slope between the two. But I personally think, I mean, I'm totally thrilled. I've done photogrammetry work. I think it's awesome. I love it. But I think we're just, 360 video has a ton of legs. There's an absolute place for it. People don't always want to walk around. A lot of times, I mean, this is why the television has been so popular. We just want to sit back and watch it and slip away and not have to think and not have to do. So I think 360 video absolutely has a lot of legs, while at the same time, the more gaming-oriented experience with first person is absolutely fascinating, and something where us as directors and cinematographers also need to look, because
it's just as relevant in that world. It's just